Quality introduction. One of the most important topics when we discuss operations is quality. Even if a process runs efficiently and effectively, the output may still fall short. If it does not meet the customer's expectations, it cannot be considered a good result. Therefore, this is a dedicated second session of the program. We will explore what quality is and how it can be managed. This program consists of 2 modules and several special topics, as you can see from the table. The first module includes 4 sub-sessions that focus on processes. The second module also includes 4 sessions, this time focusing on supply chains. At the end of the program, I have added 3 special topics: socially responsible supply chains, quality introduction, and cost of quality. In this session, we will introduce the basic concept of quality. Even if your productivity is high, it is of little value if you cannot produce what customers actually want. Processes need to be designed and managed not just to produce a large volume of output, but to deliver the right output in a way that meets customer expectations. In this session, we will explore what quality is, why it is important, and how it can be managed. There are various definitions of quality. However, they share a common idea. Quality is the ability of a product or service to consistently meet or exceed customer expectations. An important part of this definition is consistency. A process should produce quality output reliably, without significant variation. Another key element is meeting or exceeding customer expectations. There may be target specifications set by the producer. However, what matters most is meeting or exceeding the customer's expectations, not the producer's expectations. Managing quality requires a range of efforts. First, it is important to continuously improve processes so they can meet or exceed customer expectations. Even small incremental improvements can help bring the output closer to what customers expect. To achieve this, it can be useful to benchmark competitors. This helps identify performance gaps and uncover opportunities for improvement. It is also critical to empower employees. They are the ones working within the process and are often best positioned to recognize improvement opportunities. Without empowerment and motivation, employees may not take the initiative to drive quality improvements. There are many quality gurus, but we will focus on a few of their perspectives on quality. Edwards Deming is one of the most influential quality gurus, especially in post-World War II Japan's manufacturing industry. He emphasized that management should rely on structured and well-designed systems rather than ad hoc decision-making. If leaders rely too much on intuition, the output is likely to become inconsistent. He also stressed the importance of reducing variation. Variation is seen as a major source of quality problems. Therefore, if a process cannot consistently meet its target specifications, it is at least important to reduce variation within the process. He also left an interesting comment. We have learned to live in a world of mistakes and defective products as if they were necessary to life. Think about our daily life. How many mistakes do you make in a day? How many times do you fail to arrive on time for an appointment? Sometimes we simply ignore these mistakes as unavoidable or as part of human nature. However, as these mistakes accumulate, they can become a significant cause of larger problems. It is not necessary to accept that mistakes are inevitable. There are many ways to avoid them and to prevent the production of defective products. There are 14 points that Deming highlighted. If an organization can follow these 14 points, it may be able to produce high-quality outputs. It is not necessary to memorize all of them, but it is useful to briefly go over each point. As you review them, you may realize that none of the ideas are particularly difficult to understand. However, not many organizations are able to follow all 14 points consistently. Sometimes it is challenging to apply even basic and fundamental principles in practice. Another quality guru is Joseph Juran. Dr. Juran stressed the importance of understanding the cost of quality. It is natural for organizations to invest resources to improve quality, which involves costs. However, there are also costs associated with not meeting customer expectations. Therefore, there is a trade-off between these 2 types of cost. He also emphasized that quality should be defined not by the producer's specifications, but from the customer's perspective, resulting in fitness for use. Quality is a cost. This is because costs increase when you produce poor quality products or services. For example, if your quality level is not 100%, meaning not perfect, you may need to produce more than the market demand or customer orders. This is because you expect that some of your output will be lost due to defects. As a result, you produce extra units to compensate for losses caused by less than perfect quality. In some cases, defective items need to be fixed through rework. Even if they are discarded, there may still be recycling or scrapping costs, especially if the materials are environmentally harmful. One of the quality gurus, Crosby, reported that at least 20% of revenue in well-run manufacturing companies and 35% of operating costs in service companies occur because of quality issues, based on industry data. In addition, he found that the cost associated with quality issues is, on average, 4 to 5 times higher than a company's profit margin. This means that a significant portion of financial performance is influenced by costs arising from quality issues. These costs can be categorized as follows. First, appraisal costs occur in order to avoid shipping defective products to the market. Examples include inspections, sometimes even destructive testing, as well as acquiring and maintaining testing equipment. Second, prevention costs arise when companies invest in quality training for employees and work closely with suppliers to prevent potential quality issues. If quality issues are detected before products are shipped and defects are corrected internally, these costs are referred to as internal failure costs. However, if defective products are shipped without detection, the company must take additional actions to fix the issues in the market. These are called external failure costs. Overall, the key point is that the cost of not meeting customer expectations, known as the cost of quality, is significant, whether it is explicitly recognized or not. IBM, which has been considered one of the most innovative companies, reported that it may cost only $1 to fix a potential quality issue at an early stage, such as during the design phase. However, if the issue is detected later during testing, the cost may double. If it is only addressed at the installation stage, the cost can be up to 92 times higher. This clearly shows that it is far more effective to identify and fix quality issues as early as possible. So, there are two dimensions that we need to understand in order to manage the cost of quality. First, at the philosophy level, people in the organization need to understand the importance of managing quality and the significant costs related to quality problems. Second, people need to know the proper tools they can use to correct quality issues or improve the current quality level. Sometimes, it is not easy to quantify every aspect of a product or service. However, proper quality management tools can help people take a more scientific approach to solving quality problems. As I mentioned earlier, there are 4 main categories of quality cost as follows. First, prevention cost. Second, appraisal cost. Third, internal failure cost. And finally, external failure cost. Let's go over each of these categories. First, prevention cost is the cost that occurs when we try to prevent quality issues in our operations. This includes developing quality management plans, educating and training employees, implementing process control, involving suppliers, and reporting. On the other hand, there are appraisal costs to avoid situations where the company ships defective products to the market. For example, we need to inspect incoming materials and conduct inspections during the process, as well as at the end of the process. We also need to acquire and maintain testing equipment. In some cases, products require destructive testing, which can further increase the cost. Internal failure cost refers to quality-related costs that occur within our organization or within our operations. Examples include scrap, rework, retesting, downtime due to quality issues, yield losses, and handling defective materials. These types of costs occur internally and are relatively easier to manage compared to external failure costs. These types of costs occur internally and are relatively easier to manage compared to external failure costs. External failure costs occur when failures happen outside of the organization's boundary. Examples include handling customer complaints, processing returned materials, and covering warranty charges. In the worst case, these issues can lead to lost business opportunities due to quality problems. Therefore, at a very high level, there are failure costs, both internal and external, and prevention and appraisal costs, which move in opposite directions. As the quality level improves, internal and external failure costs tend to decrease as you move from poor quality to higher quality. At the same time, prevention and appraisal costs may increase as you try to make your product or service meet a higher quality level. People may debate which cost is more important. However, it is generally accepted that organizations aim for the point where the failure cost curve meets the prevention and appraisal cost curve. This intersection represents the point where the total cost of quality is minimized. In other words, organizations do not necessarily try to maximize quality, but rather to minimize the total cost of quality, which may not always align with what customers expect. From the supplier's perspective, they set the target quality level at the point where the total cost of quality is minimized, not where quality is maximized. However, there are situations where quality must be maximized, otherwise the outcome has little or no value. For example, think about medical surgery. If the quality of the surgery is not very high or close to perfect, most outcomes would be considered failures. Similarly, in industries such as airlines and healthcare, where the cost of failure is extremely high, the focus is on achieving very high quality rather than minimizing the total cost of quality. Therefore, some quality gurus, such as Philip Crosby, emphasize the importance of zero defects. He also highlighted the importance of leadership, as well as a strong focus on the cost of quality. Dr. Crosby actually claimed that quality is free. This is a very meaningful statement that we should think about. It means that if we do not make mistakes and do things correctly from the beginning, there is no need to pay additional costs due to quality issues. In this sense, quality itself is free. The costs arise only because we fail to pay full attention to quality from the start. A famous quality guru from Japan advocated quality circles, where workers are involved in quality improvement using various quality tools. Therefore, it is important for employees to learn basic quality tools and collaborate to improve the quality level. One of the significant quality tools is the Taguchi model, known as the Taguchi loss function. He used a graphical tool to describe the loss to society whenever there is a problem with the quality of a good or service. His work contributed to both quality philosophy and quality tools. The traditional view of quality management is to accept any goods or services that fall between the lower specification and the upper specification. Although the target value is at the center, it is often difficult to meet that exact target. Therefore, if goods or services fall within the acceptable range, between the lower and upper specifications, they are considered acceptable. However, if you look at the vertical axis, it represents a cost function ranging from 0 to a high value. If you meet the target value, the cost is 0, but as you move further away from the target, the cost increases. At the lower and upper specification limits, the cost is already quite high, similar to the case where goods or services do not meet the minimum or maximum specification limits. The key point is that cost still exists even when products fall within the lower and upper specifications, which can result in a significant amount of waste. If you translate this cost into a dollar value, you can see how much waste is created when quality does not meet the target value. However, we often accept this situation as if it were unavoidable. The conclusion is that we should aim to meet the target value as closely as possible. Unless the target is met, some level of waste will always exist. While the loss is much greater when products do not meet the lower or upper specifications, there is still some loss, even when goods and services fall within that acceptable range. So, if we want to manage quality, we need to understand what quality means. Different customers may care about different dimensions of quality. For example, when you buy a car, some people may focus on engine performance, while others may care more about the design. There are multiple dimensions of quality, and each customer pays attention to different ones. Therefore, it is important to understand what types of quality dimensions exist. Although there can be many dimensions, there are several important dimensions of quality in general. First, performance. This refers to the primary characteristics of a product when it operates. Second, features. These are the secondary characteristics, often related to appearance or additional functions. Third, conformance. This is about whether the product meets the specifications that were promised. Even if the product performs well, customers may complain if there is a gap between the promised specifications and the actual output. Fourth, reliability. This refers to the consistency of performance over time. Fifth, durability, which determines the product's lifespan. Sixth, perceived quality. This relates to brand image or reputation in the market or society. Seventh, serviceability. This concerns how easily customers can receive service when needed and the level of friendliness during service delivery. Eighth, aesthetics. This refers to the sensory aspects that add value beyond basic functionality. Managing quality starts with understanding these different dimensions of quality. Now, let's think about the quality dimensions of services. Are they different from those of goods? Since services are different from physical goods, they have different dimensions of quality. There are 5 different dimensions of service quality. First, reliability. This is the ability to perform the promised service dependably and accurately. If the service is good one day and poor the next, it cannot be considered reliable. Second, tangibles. Although services are not physical, there are ways to make them somewhat tangible. For example, the appearance of facilities, equipment, personnel, and communication materials. Service representatives often wear uniforms to enhance this perception. Third, responsiveness. This refers to the willingness to help customers and provide prompt service without delay. Fourth, assurance. This is about the knowledge and courtesy of employees and their ability to convey trust and confidence. Fifth, empathy. This involves providing caring and individualized attention to customers. So, unlike the quality dimensions of goods, services have their own distinct dimensions of quality. This is a very useful model for understanding the various gaps that customers may face in the service delivery process. The first potential gap occurs between the customer's expected service and management's perception of those expectations. This happens frequently because service providers may misunderstand what customers actually expect. The second gap occurs when service providers set service quality specifications based on their own perceptions of customer expectations, which may differ from the actual expectations. The third gap occurs when the service delivered does not match the service quality specifications. The fourth gap occurs when there is a difference between the actual service delivery and the external communication to customers. For example, governments are public service providers. They offer various services and often publish news or reports highlighting their performance. However, people may feel that the services they receive differ from what is communicated through public media. Service providers often present their performance in a positive way, but the reality may be different. Finally, there is a gap between the customer's perceived service and their expected service. The key point is that there are multiple points where gaps can be created in the service delivery process. Therefore, the service delivery process needs to be designed carefully and precisely to ensure customer satisfaction. So, how do we manage service quality? In some cases, we need to design a service recovery process for situations where customers are not satisfied and actively complain. Service guarantees are another tool to consider. For example, you may see promotions such as lowest price guarantees in online shopping platforms. Ultimately, the most important effort should focus on achieving zero defects. This means trying to eliminate any potential sources of defects in the process. In this special session, we discussed the concept of quality. Quality means meeting customer expectations consistently. Therefore, it is just as important to understand quality as it is to understand processes. To manage quality effectively, we need to understand the various dimensions of quality for both goods and services. An interesting question is how AI can help in managing quality more effectively. In the production of goods, there are many areas where AI can contribute. For example, AI can detect potential causes of defects at an early stage through sensors, images, and precise measurements. In addition, sampling may no longer be necessary to test product quality. Instead of testing a small sample, it is now possible to assess the entire population, which can improve accuracy while reducing the limitations of sampling. However, when it comes to service quality, it is more closely related to human perception and experience. AI can still contribute in certain areas, but there are aspects where human involvement remains essential in delivering and managing service operations.